Hi, this is Hugh Greenwood from the North Melbourne Footy Club, and you're listening to another episode of the Hashtag Kangaroos podcast.
Welcome to another episode. My name is Dean Vassey. You can follow me on X at Hashtag Kangas, Instagram Hashtag Kangaroos podcast. Also on YouTube now, just type in my name, Dean Vassey, and you watch the shows there now as well. All right, tonight I'll welcome back Jesse. Welcome back, Jesse, to the show, and we are here to chat about the first week of trade period. Not that there's much going on there, Jesse. It's just been Jack Darling, and that was confirmed as one of the first trades of the period. It was early Monday morning, but it's been a lot of bullshit and rumours since then. Looks like there may be a few deals that will go to the wire next week.
Yeah, it's been a pretty disappointing trade period. It's too long. The only people who say it's not too long are the media because they love it. That gives them an extra couple of weeks of a job. It's too long. It's just too long. There's not enough happening. We've had like you said, we've only had, I think there's 2 confirmed trades. They were done early in the piece, other than the free agents. Some picks went around today, and that's good. That's exciting. But other than that, it's been pretty boring, hasn't it?
Yeah, I try and stay away from social media at this time of year because it's just a lot of talking shit. People frigging, glazing over the possibility of getting Clayton Oliver to Geelong or something like that. So, yeah, I just, I kind of stay off social media this time. I'll have a look next Wednesday. We'll do a podcast then. That's it. So, yeah, but it looks like
you're doing better than me, mate. I've resorted to Big Footy just to try and get anything.
Yeah, that's one of the last places I probably look, to be honest with you. So, yeah. But we'll see how we go. But we'll talk about our players and possible players that might be coming to the football club. Luke Parker and Caleb Daniel are the 2 main ones. It looks like it has a bit of a way to go. Dan Houston doesn't look like that'll happen. I think Port may use it as a leverage to get either Collingwood or Carlton to pay overs for him. How's the confidence level with you to be able to get a deal for both Parker and Daniel after this trade period on Wednesday, which finishes?
Parker is a done deal in my mind. It's just who they're playing poker. It's just who's going to relent first. At the end of the day, he's a champion of the Sydney Football Club. If he goes, I want to go to North Melbourne, they're going to relent. They are going to relent. They're not going to just screw over a champion of the football club. It's just not going to happen. I can't see them doing that. Now, I'm happy to pay more than the pick 60. Now, is pick 60 worth it? Probably it is worth it for someone of his age, but I don't think that's semi-comparable to your Jordan Lewis is probably a good example. The older blokes who have gone to a club and played a role. I tend to think that pick in the 40s gets it done. I know some people think that's too high. The thing is that pick, like we were talking about beforehand, that probably blows out to 50, 55 maybe, with all the crap that goes on with academies, father-sons. Who knows what else other rules there are that benefit clubs, but that pick will blow out. So I'm happy to give that pick up. The only thing that may be an option is that I know that next year's draft is academy heavy. I know we say that every year, but next year is meant to be particularly academy heavy, especially at the top. Sydney, Brisbane, Gold Coast, GWS apparently have all got academy kids next year. And next year, the draft rules change in terms of the point values, where the points are significantly lower, and you need to have a lot more picks to make up the ground. So we're going to see a lot less of what we saw today with Brisbane, where they were giving away picks and getting a heap of later picks, which worked well for them. Maybe we could offer Sydney a future pick. We would have to work through it with them, but I think there's a couple options there. I'm very confident on that one. Caleb Daniel is a very interesting one because I appreciate that he hasn't nominated because he obviously loves the Western Bulldogs. And I mean, in an ideal world, he would be playing every week at the Dogs. The only reason he's entertaining it is because he's not. I think it gets done. I think it gets done. I'm actually very confident on that. I reckon they'll strike a deal. Ideally, we would use that pick 40 on him. I don't think that's going to get the job done. Maybe a future. I wouldn't give up our second, and we'll talk about the quality of this draft. I might give up a future second, and some people are going to say that's too early for him given his age. But we're talking about someone who's a vice captain of a club. He's got good leadership qualities. I think he's a good player. I think he's been mismanaged at the Bulldogs. You don't just get to be, he hasn't. It's not like he's dropped off, in my opinion. I think he's got all the skills still. It's just that the way they play has changed. So I'm actually pretty confident of that. I think if he's suggested to the Dogs that he's open to it, and they don't think that he'll play next year, I think he'll get done. Now, ideally, he would come out and ask for it. That would be great, because then I think it'd be a done deal. And I know the Dogs selfishly could keep him, and he'd be a great depth player if he doesn't play sub every week, if not playing, most games. But yeah, I've just got a feeling that gets done. I think those two, for mine, get done. Whatever, but hopefully we don't overpay.
And I think there's a lot of posturing, like you said. It's a lot of poker here, throwing your chips in a little bit more, bluffing a little bit. I agree with you. I think they both get done, but it might go down to Tuesday or Wednesday. Like Luke Parker, what would you be comfortable with? Now, you said in the 40s, but you wouldn't want to pay any more than that, would you? Because I know you talked about, like father sons and academy prospects. The pick goes down to about 50 anyway, but you wouldn't want to pay any more than that, would you?
Oh, no.
Not for him.
No, look, as I said, our pick 44 will drift. That's for certain. So that will drift out. Pick 25 will drift as well. Pick 25, in all honesty, and this is the only thing that people forget, pick 25 is probably going to end up being pick 30, at least. So while I think there'll be very good players at 30, and I wouldn't want to pay 30 for either Caleb Daniel or Luke Parker, I'd pay 44 for either of them. I can understand them not wanting 62. 62 probably becomes 70, and you're probably not using it. Yeah. But 44, I'm happy to pay, but if the Swans said, we absolutely want your pick 25 and we're not going to take anything less, then bad luck, I guess.
No, it might just have to miss out. Who knows?
Yeah. And look, I think it would be very important to get Parker to the club. Don't get me wrong. He would be a game changer in terms of leadership quality, a game changer in terms of leadership quality. But I'm also not prepared to give up potentially a pick between 25 and 30 for him, knowing that it's good draft and that player could end up being a really good player. So, yeah, I think we were saying beforehand, it's a bit of a shame, and this is no offence to Fisher and Dylan Stephens, but those two picks which they said we will re-review, let's be honest, they would have let us use those picks because of how bad we were this year. Yeah. And I mean, what did that end up being? Pick 19 and then...
Well, let's say pick 19 and 20 or something.
Yeah, it was 19 and then whatever Carlton traded for with someone, I don't know. So, yeah, pick 19 and 20, we'll say. So that would have been handy. It would have given us a lot of capital. But, yeah, look, it is what it is. So I think that 44 probably gets it done for one of them. And then I would offer a future third or second for the other one, knowing that next year's draft isn't the same as this year's.
Do you think? Yeah, I mean, you're very keen on Caleb Daniel. I did see you put that on X and you talked about his stats. He seems to play well against us. His career high against us in disposals, I think it was 40, and he had his best game against us this year. So we're generally pretty good at that, aren't we, Jesse? If you play well against us, we're going to try and recruit you.
Yeah, and I don't want to. He played us in his last 5 games, and that pads the stats a little bit. But I mean, look. Last year, he played the 23 games. So in 2023, he played 23 games. He was getting 92 Supercoach points. So champion data. That's the fourth most in his career. It's still pretty good since he's been playing since 2015. He had 16 coaches' votes last year. That's, again, pretty good. He was averaging 23 disposals a game. Disposal efficiency was rolling around at 76%. So, tick. His kicking efficiency was a bit off last year, but I think that's because I was playing him a little bit more up the ground a little bit, which was, the interesting part. He did kick 10 goals last year, which was the second most in his career. In his second year, he played as a small forward, and then I remember they threw him back, and it was a masterclass from Bevo. But yeah, he kicked 10 goals, so they played him in a different position. This year, he had he played 16 games, and I would hazard a guess that half, if not more, of those were a sub.
I think there were 5 that were sub-affected.
Yeah, okay. So, 5. So a third of those games sub-affected. And he was probably subbed out in, some other games as well. I know he had a couple niggles during the year. So, his stats they don't read great. But we're still talking about someone he isn't that old. Like, he's not that old. He would play off the half-back line for us, his preferred position. We know he's a good kick. He would allow McKercher to go up the field. He would allow Fisher to either end up out of the team or up forward, which is where he should be playing. I don't want to see him off the half-back line. So it'd give us a reliable kick. There's a part of me that goes, the only reason that getting Houston would be good is because we'd finally get that big name. And it would hopefully tie some talent, maybe get the morale up of the group. But knowing that we're probably 3, 4, 5 years away from really doing anything, is Caleb Daniel, for what we would pay for him, that much worse than Dan Houston? I know Dan Houston is a dual Australian the last 2 years. Don't get me wrong. There is a big weight difference. But in terms of the long-term game of getting picks in, bringing someone in with leadership who can play a role off the half-back line and play a role better than role players we've brought in, I think it's a good get. It reminds me of Hawthorn last year. Look at everyone laughed at them. They brought in Marbiel Chol. They got Jack Gunston back from Brisbane. They brought in just these Massimo. They brought in these random players and turned them all into superstars. I think Caleb Daniel would play a real role. So yeah, look, I rate him. I'm pretty happy with that, but I can understand why some others are hesitant.
192 AFL games as well. I mean, you talk about Luke Parker 292, Jack Darling 298. Look, Caleb Daniel 192 games. That's a lot of experience you bring into the club. That's probably 2 or 3 wins alone in itself, isn't it?
Oh, 100% it is. I mean, how many players on our list are over the age of 27?
Oh, that's a good question. So you're going to look up for me, Jesse? Because I can't be bothered.
I'll do it. I would say 2. I'm going to say 2. I'm not including Jack Darling in that. Let's just assume we're saying pre the period. So Aiden Core, obviously.
Yeah. Luke
McDonald. How old is Luke McDonald these days?
He's turning 30 early next year.
Yep. So Luke McDonald, Aiden Core,
Jack Darling,
and now Jack Darling. I think that is it. Just skimming up the page. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that is it. Because Greenwood's obviously gone. So that's 3 players on our list who are over the age of 27. That's absurd. That is absolutely. There's no other club in the land that has that discrepancy. And the problem is that, like, Aiden Core is he played pretty good some games this year. Luke McDonald is Luke McDonald. I don't want to get into Luke McDonald, but there is a big void there. There is a massive void of leadership. We desperately need it. They need to bring in 2, 3, 4 players in between that 25 to 33 range, just to add some leadership, take the hits. People are saying they're going to waste opportunities for kids. We can't just keep throwing the kids to the wolves. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. I think the best way of describing that, when everyone says just play the kids, and I've been guilty of it as well, is look at the different methods that Gold Coast and GWS took when they came into the competition. Now, Gold Coast went and got Gary Ablett. So, yeah, they went and got an absolute superstar. They went and got 2 or 3 other guys who weren't really, they paid overs for, and I don't think were that great.
Yeah.
And then they went all kids. They've never played finals. They've never recovered from that because people just left. It just fell into a heap. GWS were more competitive quickly. They made a final within 4 years of inception, or 4 or 5 years. They were on there pretty quickly. they got the mix right. They brought in a lot of older bodies. They brought in Corns, you remember. They brought in was Brogan or the Ruckman. They had a lot of big bodies who took the hits for 2-3 years. It helped that they were given a whole heap of number one draft picks, and whenever they leave, they get a number one draft pick from the club that trades with them or a free agent. So they've just got this endless cycle of number one picks. But I think we can't just take that approach. We need to get players in to play with the kids because we have enough top 10 draft picks.
Yeah.
It's about building around them now.
No, even like we talk about next year's first round, and even Brady Rawlings sort of said the other day, we can't just keep going to the draft. Not in those words, but we're going into the draft for the fifth year in a row with young talent. I mean, this has got to be it. We've got to start making inroads.
If we 100%, if we don't get better, if we performed next year the same as we did this year, I think it would be, well, I think LDU would leave for one. I think there'd be a couple others demanding trades. I think it would almost be I don't want to say the death of the club. I don't want to go that far, but because the AFL's never going to let a club die. But we would lose a heap of the fan base that we're already the smallest club in Victoria. A heap of the fan base are just going to give up. I think that's where the fans are at. We've had enough. And I think another
patience is wearing thin.
Yeah. 100%. I think we would have a mass walkout if we played next year like we did this year. I know we had some good games in the middle, but all in all, it was still an unsuccessful year. I think it showed more signs and promise than some of the previous years, but not. I'm sick of winning 1 or 2, 3 games.
No, and that's the thing. Like, when Fitzroy got kicked out of the competition, the AFL murdered them. Basically, they had a better winning percentage over the last 5 years than we did. So, it puts things in perspective.
If
the
AFL was so inclined, if this was a previous era, we would be gone by now, in my opinion, because we have the smallest. And this also is the biggest thing about us in trade period time, I'm not worried about how we're performing necessarily. What worries me, we're the smallest Victorian club. We have the least fans. I won't say we have the least amount of money, but we probably do. St Kilda, but I mean, St Kilda probably has more. Well, they do have more fans than us. So we don't have the same advantage of being an interstate club who, regardless of how big you are, you can still attract talent because people will want to go back to their home state. And that's, you look at your Brisbane and they go, oh, look at how well they did. They turned it around, and absolutely they did. Lachie Neale was a godsend, and that was just fluke. But all of the other ones, Charlie Cameron, etc., they all wanted to go home. So you're able to attract that in. We can't do that because if you want to come to Victoria, why wouldn't you go play for Collingwood? Why wouldn't you play for Carlton? Heck, players go to Essendon, and sure, they haven't played finals in 20 years, but they can still all attract talent. And that's the one advantage if you look at the clubs around us, your West Coast and your Richmond. Like, they're having mass exoduses. They're so far behind us. But because of their size, their resources, and their draw, they can bring things in and game change much quicker than we can. So I would say we have the biggest disadvantage of any team in the competition. By far none. We attract talent who has no other option. And that's the reality of it. And unfortunately, that means our only option is to bring in players who can fill a gap and then get the kids in and build a team out of that then can perform. And look, we all saw what happened in the mid-teens. If we play good football, we will attract some talent in. We won't get your top liners, but your Del Santo, you've got Higgins. We were able to attract players to the club. So that will happen if we can perform. So, from a pure business sense, it must worry the AFL because draft picks won't just save a club. And that's what Rawlings, I think, and the team have realised. They need to find another way out of this. It's not the draft.
Nah, and it makes it really tough. And if you want to get talent, like we've shown the last couple of years, you kind of have to overpay for average players like a Zach Fisher, Dylan Stevens, and hope they become A-grade players. You're really hoping a lot. And Griffin Logue as well. We signed him to a 5-year deal. Unfortunately, he's had torn his ACL.
Yeah,
we had to overpay for him.
Yeah, I think what helped with Logue is because he's really, really good friends with Zerha, ironically. And I think he wanted to come back to Victoria. He knew he was going to play down defence for us. He knew that he had that role locked in. So you will get your you'll get your rough player who I think Logue I think he could be a very good player if he's not hit by injuries. So we will get the odd player, but it's not like a Richmond where they're down the bottom. This year they're going to end up with like 6 first-round picks because they're throwing people out, and you've got stupid clubs like Gold Coast paying pick 6 for Rioli and wanting to trade Noble for pick 13, and it's beyond me. That one rattled me. I read something earlier, and they go Gold Coast were absolutely about to do Noble for pick 13, and Lepper, so Collingwood list manager Lepage, wanted something additional. And then all of these clubs all of a sudden have gone to Gold Coast and said, we'll give you this for pick 13, and they've gone, oh. And even Lepper said on Trade Radio, goes, oh, I think they realised the potential of that pick, aka they didn't know what the hell they're doing. And so, there's opportunities, but we have to get some players in, and they don't need to be superstars, but they need to be players who can come in and add leadership and play a role till the kids can take us forward, because we're not getting a big name in.
No, we're not getting Dan Houston. That's the big name of the trade.
I don't give that 0. I don't give it 0. But the only reason I don't, and I know we talked about it beforehand, said if he wanted to come, it would be done because we're offering a future first. Yeah. Now, Port might not value that future first because the draft is very weak next year. They might really want in this draft here. We're not going to give up pick 2. Oh, God, I hope we don't give up pick 2. And the thing that's interesting is that, Carlton don't want to get rid of pick 13 or 14 for him, which is a bit bizarre, but they don't want to get rid of him. They rate the draft. And Collingwood seems to have made a mess of things a little bit in terms of now Port Adelaide and Gold Coast are just dealing with one another because Collingwood thinks that they can just demand things and not have to pay for anything, which is a very Collingwood attitude. So, I'm not giving us 0. I'm not giving us 0%. I'm giving us maybe 5 to 10%.
Yeah, it's better than nothing, I guess. There's always a chance. We'll get back a little bit back on track, I suppose. We'll talk about what's going on. And Caleb Daniel, now, you mentioned McKercher would go up the ground next year. Where do you think he goes? Do you think he goes to a wing like an Errol Gordon? Do you think he goes in the heart midfield? And Zach Fisher, I think I'd like to see him as a small forward, to be honest with you. We're desperate for a small forward. He's played 110, 15 games at Carlton there. I'd like to give that a try. What do you think, anyway?
Yeah, I've spoken to a few Carlton fans about Fish, and they say he's not a defender. I don't know what you're doing with him. He's not a defender. You want him as a small forward. He can play small pressure forward. He can do that. He can kick some goals. Play him forward. Just play him forward. We need small forwards. And it's not like he's tall. He's got some pace. He should be able to apply pressure. I'd definitely be playing him forward. That's what I would be doing. Now, in terms of McKercher, I think he goes up to the wing. Because we don't have the other wing defined, especially now that Shields is gone. So we probably get him up onto the wing. I know a lot of people compared him to a Zach Merritt in his draft year, albeit with a lot more pace, but a similar type. So he probably gets a couple midfield opportunities, but I think he plays wing.
Yeah, I like him pushing up the ground on the wing. I like to see him kick the ball inside 50 rather than rebound the ball outside 50 all the time. And try and pinpoint passes that aren't there from the defensive half. So
No, I agree. I would rather him play the wing, learn to play wing. He has the fitness. We know he has the fitness for it. He's a very, very fit kid. I would like to see him play wing, get some opportunities in the midfield. Don't play him half forward. I don't think that's his go. I'd rather him delivering the ball in 50. But yeah, I think he pushes up the ground as long as we can get another half backer. Because the problem is, if we don't get one in, who else is going to play half back? But so that's a little bit frustrating if we can't land one of those. But yeah. I think back to Zach Fisher for a moment. Look, he's kicked 53 goals in 125 games, so it's not a massive average, but he did play defence for us this year, and I think last year he played 12 games for Carlton, and he had 4 goals, so I think he played mostly down back. The year before, so 2022, he kicked 18 goals.
Yeah.
So I'd play him there. That's what I would do with him. I think he could play a role there. Dylan Stevens, I'm less sold on, but
no, but yeah, I mean, it's more a case of just trying him there because we don't have many options here. I think you'd still be a better option than Robert Hansen at this stage. I know Robert Hansen has developed in the last 12 months.
That's a good call. No, that's a good point. And to be fair, and this is the one grain of salt that I got off Big Footy that I actually have heard some legitimate reports about. Is apparently Hardiman is training really, really well in this off-season. I'm hearing some pretty good things about him, and apparently the club are pretty wrapped with how he's coming together. So in terms of half-backers, you've got Goda, who's going to come back, who I really rate. He can play wing, he can play half-back. But you've got Goda. I still think there is a player in Bergman. He gets injured a lot, but he's a good height in that, and I think there's something there. And then Hardiman, they really rate coming through. So even if you just said Goda and Hardiman, they're 2 half-backers there. We don't need Fisher running off the half-back line because he can't defend and he can't kick the ball. So I'd rather him up forward where he can tackle.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about Caleb Daniel, McKercher, Zach Fisher. I think you could only play one of them in the back line. And if you're going to get Caleb Daniel, who's an undersized defender like the other two, then he has to be the option. I mean, he's the ball user. He takes 100%. The kick-outs. And he can protect one of them because they'll generally have to play on the opposition's weakest forward. So, yeah.
I completely agree. It's a little bit different to having a Hardiman or a Goda as your rebound because they also defend. They're natural defenders. So they'll defend and they'll rebound. But in terms of that non-defensive rebounder, which most clubs has one, you can't have 2. And I think this year we had 3 at times, and we saw what happened.
Yeah. I think, generally, especially at North Melbourne, we can find those halfback flankers. Yeah. You can find them in other positions. We've tried Jaden Stevenson there. It seems to be our default, like you've said before. Like if you're struggling up the ground, we'll just put you on a halfback flank and try and find you some forms. So.
That in midfield.
Yeah, we're a bit of a funny club like that. So if Jack Darling struggles next year, Jesse, in the first 6 weeks, you probably see him on the halfback flank.
Yeah, imagine that. Well,
yeah, well, we'll keep going. There's a lot of talk about the number 2 pick, and Brady Rawlings did say there is a possibility we could trade down. I talked about this off air with you. Now, Gold Coast are going to give up pick 6 for Daniel Rioli, which is they want pick 6 and 13, Richmond, which is a bit crazy for a 27-year-old, 28-year-old halfback flanker.
Yeah, I know. Richmond taking the piss. That's. We're talking about a bloke, he's a good player, but in what world is he worth more than Dan Houston?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Gold Coast should be stripped of all their draft. They just fold them. They don't know what they just throw picks away for fun. We're talking about.
They got Lockie Weller for pick 2.
They gave away 2 and 3 for him, and then said, we've got to play for players who want to play for us, and then. No, the worst one was that Bowes one where they gave away pick 7 and Jack Bowes for
they just want to get rid of his contract,
some money, and it's like, if they had done pick 6 for Riola and pick 13 for Noble, oh god, the AFL should have shut them down. That would be so bad.
Yeah, and that's the thing. This is where, as a list manager, you've got to take advantage of this and go to them. Like I was saying this time last year, I remember they were going to offer pick 7 or 8 for Taron Thomas. And then, now we didn't know what was going to happen. And I even said at the time, I go, well, this is where you've got to start taking advantage of these things, like Taron Thomas, just in case he stuffs up again, which he did, obviously. And we didn't know what that was going to happen. But, sometimes you just got to you take advantage of these clubs, like, because they seem to, Gold Coast, they seem to fold at every chance they get, don't they?
Yeah, they do. They
want that instant gratification, that instant success.
I don't know what they're doing.
And they just think.
But even this instant gratification, like the players they're targeting aren't that good. They're good players. Don't get me wrong. They walk into our team, but they're not. Look, it is what it is. But to the point you're making about our pick 2 and being able to move that. The problem is, I think we were talking about this beforehand. This draft is meant to be so even. They go the top, 8-ish are really good, and then the next probably 10 to 15 are pretty even, and then anywhere up to probably 40-ish is pretty solid, like better than a normal draft. Not as good as ironically, the Taron Thomas draft, which was the super draft with Max King, Ben King, Rosie, Butters, Walsh, Bailey Smith. Yeah, it was a good draft, and in between all of them, we got Taron Thomas. But
which worked out okay for a period of time. If he wasn't such a dickhead.
Other than we used that pick to get Jared Pollock, but we won't go into that. So the problem is, it's the worst year to have pick 1, 2, or 3 and want to trade it for multiples, because there's not a clear pick 1 unless a club is in love with someone. Then it's very, very tough to do. You said before before we were on air, would you trade pick 2 for, I think it was the Saints, 7 and 8? Oh, in a heartbeat, I would absolutely do that. But I don't think they would do that. No. I think we'd have to give them 2 and maybe a future second or a second rounder, which in a normal year just wouldn't happen. The Jason Horne-Francis year, we had clubs offering us 3 first rounders plus a second.
Yeah. No, that's right. Well, the Crows, wasn't it? They offered.
They offered us 3 firsts for number
4, 17 or something like that. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah. I think it was like one. Yeah. It was 3 first rounders though, which is, you're not getting that this year. That's for sure. But there is, Fremantle has 10 and 11 at the moment. Now I know that they want to give them up for, who are they getting in? Shai Bolton. They're getting in. Baker might end up with them now because of that whole dilemma. But the thing with Freo and West Coast, they're obviously keeping an eye for next year because Chad Warner comes out of contract. He's a Western Australian. But, they've got 10 and 11. If somehow we could... would you do 2 for 10 and 11? I probably would, because most of the tools are probably 8 onwards. There's not really anyone else, is there? 7 and 8 from St Kilda is probably the only one that's really tempting. Unless somehow you can trade 2 for Gold Coast 6 and 13. Which is not going to happen.
No, they're giving them away to someone else. We're unfortunately going to probably miss the boat on that.
The only one who actually wants to trade down is Essendon, and they've only got 2 picks, the poor club. They've got 9 and 31.
Well, at least it's quality over quantity, I suppose.
It is, but they're about to get rid of Stringer for pick 60 odd, and he kicked 45 goals.
I don't understand what's going on there.
My theory is that he's done something bad. They know he's done something bad, and they're just going to take whatever they can get. Plus, that small forward who they're rorting the system for that 1 year benefit of having him in an academy, who's the best small in the draft. People are saying they'll bid on him before pick 9 just to stuff them up. So they're in a bad spot now. But no one else wants to trade up. So
hard to feel sorry for him.
Well, I don't feel sorry for Essendon, but.
Yeah, I think the frustration with Jake Stringer is that he starts off really fit, and then by the time round 12 or 13 comes along, he's put on about 7 kilos. It looks like he's lost interest in football a little bit, maybe because he plays for Essendon, I don't know. So I think they're frustrated with him, and they just want to get rid of him and start us again. And they don't have Dodoro to deal with anymore, so maybe...
No.
Yeah, maybe they've got someone, Matt Rosa, in it that wants to build relationships with.
I'm going to make a prediction.
Yeah.
I reckon next trade, not this trade period, next trade period, Harley Reid will request a trade to Essendon.
I don't think you go to Essendon.
I've just got a feeling. I've got a feeling he's got he's got some ties there. They was seen having lunch with Matt Rosa. This is a little while ago. I think he will come back to Victoria. I don't think
He will eventually. Yeah, I think he'll still give it another 2 more years. That's my feel.
maybe he'll do his 3 and then he'll come. But
yeah,
assuming the funny part is he's obviously dating Dersma's sister. So, sorry, Dersma's sister. So
yeah,
he's
close for Carlton.
So there's probably a part of him that wants to move back to Vic as well because of that. Assuming they're in a pretty serious relationship, and if he was going to move back here, he'd probably want to play with his brother. So and you could make a joke about, he can come play with Zane, but
his future brother-in-law.
Yeah, well, there's rampant rumours. Every person their dog goes, Zane doesn't look like he wants to be at North. I'm not getting into those. That's rubbish.
No, let's not. Let's give him a little bit of hope for the future. So, let's just not write him off just yet after his first year of AFL football. I guess next year's first, there was a lot of talk about that being on the table as well. Now, you're not very high on that draft. How far would you be prepared to go for that? Let's say Fremantle offers pick 10 or 11. Would you possibly consider that? There was talk of Essendon offering pick 9 for a future first. I don't know what they're thinking if they're going to do that. But, how far would you be prepared to go giving up that future first?
So in terms of next year's picks, I've just looked up the indicative order. So that assumes that the clubs all finished in the order they did this year, but it shows us who's done some future trading. So if you look at it thus far, the whole first round is unspoiled. The only pick that's been done is Hawthorn is now in there twice. So in terms of next year, we at this point in time would have 2 and 20. The only clubs really that. So if we finished bottom 3, would I give up a top 3 draft pick in that draft for one in this draft? That's a tough one. Look, I know people are saying that they don't rate next year's draft, and I don't rate next year's draft. I think it will drop. It's meant to drop off pretty quickly. But you can't tell me that the top 3 players are going to be bad. There'll be good players in the top 5.
Well, it's a chance it might be pick 1. Who knows?
Well, absolutely.
I
hope not, but
of course.
Absolutely. There's a chance, and there'll be good players at the top of that draft. I know Dersma's brother is in there again. Talking about Dersma's, maybe if we get the 2, we can get Reid over. But the younger brother, who's a defender, is in that one. So, and he's meant to be right up the top. But there is a part of me that says, you risk your future first.
Yeah, I think it's down to the draft too much at the moment, isn't it?
Like maybe if you were a Richmond or something like that who said, no, I want to be stacked in both drafts, or maybe a Fremantle or a West Coast who go, you know what, I want to pick next year to try and tempt Warner. And so if I can get a pick 2 and 3 next year, will that get the job done? Well, absolutely, we'll get the job done. That might be an option to say we'll trade you our future second for, say, your pick 3 or your pick. Well, I'm going to pick 1, but if Richmond got pick 6 and said we'll give you pick 6 for your future second, for example, I'd entertain that. If Fremantle said we'll give you 10 and 11 for your future first, I would do that. If West Coast said we'll give you 3 for your future first, but you've got to chuck me in maybe a future second or something, I'd probably do that. There's a lot of different options, but I think we need to act now as much as we can, but we also can't be wasteful. You can't just throw your pick away and then end up in a worse situation.
No, that's right. I mean, you don't want to just get, we'll get pick 12 or something like that. Let's say pick 13 at Gold Coast. I'll give you a future first because we don't really care about next year's draft. You still don't want to throw it away for something like that. So
no, it is very
have one in the future because there's a good chance we're not going to be a good team next season.
Look, I think it's pretty. Unless we did something miraculous, we're probably going to finish bottom 4, meaning you're going to have a top 4 pick. God, if we finish bottom 4 again, the AFL might give us another friggin' compensation because they won't know what to do at that point. Look, yeah, it's a tough one. You would want to get a good pick this year, or you'd want to be able to get a Dan Houston, but
Yeah, of
you're not.
course.
But you're not just throwing it away. You can't just throw it away.
No, definitely not. What about this players we are not getting linked to? I suppose Matt Owens is an interesting one. The Blues happy to trade him if you want to pay overs for him. I mean, is he a small forward we could certainly look at, because we still don't have that small forward, and we haven't. I'm surprised we haven't really looked at one in his trade period from another club.
Yeah, again, I was talking to some Carlton fans, and they said, you know who he would look really good at? He would suit North Melbourne. They go, I think he'd be a good player at North. He'd be a good fit for you. And I asked them, I said, what's going on there? He kicked 34, 45 goals or something for you this year.
Yeah.
Is he a shit bloke? Like, is he just... And they go, well, look, the only thing they can say, they like him as a player, but they go, they do have a lot of small forwards. They've got Zach Williams who comes back. They want to play him up forward. They've got Motlop, who they still really highly rate. They probably think they've got enough, depth there.
Yeah.
So maybe it's interesting that no one's going for him. Does that say that there's something there that's a worry? Oh, look, I would have a crack at him. But what would you give up for him? That's the thing. Like,
Yeah.
again, I'd probably give up that pick 44, but I wouldn't give up pick 25 for him.
No, that's.
I think the other thing as well, and we talked about this before, like Jake Riccardi, I'd be going pretty hard at him. I'm assuming we've reached out to him. There is a lot of delisted free agents that are probably worth a crack. We talked about Lockie Gallant, who we were obviously linked to last year. He's a bit older than we thought he was, a bit shorter than we thought he was, but he was talked up a bit in his draft year, even as a later draft pick. But there's some other players there. There's definitely some players in this delisted list, and I've got it up at the moment, who I think would be worth a crack. Even like a Nick Hind or something from Essendon, just to come in and give you some run. Like, there's a few players there who are pretty good. You got Matt Taberner, who body's probably not going to see him through, but
It's similar to Jack Darling, though, isn't he? Like, really, he's no worse.
No, he's probably a bit younger, but you've got him. So there's him. There's a couple players there. Like, if you wanted to bring in experienced mid, for example, you got Brandon Parfitt, who got delisted from Geelong. I reckon he'll get a game somewhere else.
You'll get an opportunity.
Yeah, there's probably half a dozen players in this delisted list that I'd be keen in getting. I think the only one I wouldn't is Jack Marnie.
Did he get delisted? No, he did. No.
Yeah, the end of an era.
Yeah, no, I was waiting for that one, but I haven't checked recently. So
Gold Coast. They gave him the flick, unfortunately for him. He just, he couldn't get it done, unfortunately.
Nah, look,
I can't believe he was pick 34.
Yeah, that was. They compared him to Jack Higgins, I remember, in the draft class, but I don't know what they were watching. So. Yeah, but we can dissect this for another time. But we certainly made some strange selections around that spot in the last few years. Probably.
It's not like Chad Warner didn't go with pick 39. So.
yeah, exactly right. So, unlucky, Jesse. And just one final one. You mentioned LDU before. Now he's put off talks till next year to see how we are travelling. I think it makes sense from his point of view because there'll be clubs lining up for him next year, and I think Collingwood would be right on top of that list, I would have to think.
Yeah, look, I know a lot of people are a bit confused because he came out and said, I want to stay at North Melbourne, and then he hasn't re-signed. I mean, why would he? He came out and said that, and then we played the last 3 games like no one cared. If I was him, I would want to see actual improvement. I think he loves the club. Don't get me wrong. I think he loves the club. I think we've done a lot for him. But despite how much we have done for him, if we're going to continue to give him an environment where he can't give his best, where his talent is being wasted, he probably can't get his full potential, and he won't see success, absolutely he'll look elsewhere. And it's not like we're going to be a financially better offer for him because, St Kilda, Essendon, there's some clubs there. They'll offer huge cash.
Yeah.
Like massive contracts. There'll be multiple clubs going for him hard. So, we're already going to have to pay a lot of money for him. Like, if what's being true, someone was saying St Kilda was offering him like 1.3 or 4 a year or something like that. So we're going to have to pay north of $1 million a year to keep him on a 5-6 year deal. It's going to be Kane Corns is going to have an aneurysm, but it's going to be a long contract on big money. But
that's all we can do, really. I mean, we can't. We're going to have to pay overs to try and keep him.
And I think I think if we improve, he stays. And by improve, it doesn't have to be. I don't think he's expecting us to make the 8 next year, but he wants to see us get more than 3 wins. If we have maybe 6 wins, he stays. But if we have two or 3 wins again, would you blame him for leaving? I actually wouldn't blame him for leaving. I would not begrudge him at all. A lot of North fans would and say, he turned his back on us. Tell me any person in the world who wouldn't turn their back on their job if it was in a similar situation.
Yeah, if you go into a better situation at another company.
Yeah, exactly.
Me and you are gone.
Yeah, I'll put it in business sense. It makes sense. So, look, I don't blame him whatsoever. I'm not that nervous about it. I actually think he'll stay because I do think that we'll improve by at least 1 to 2 games wins next year. I think if we can land Parker, if Darling's body stays together, but they add the leadership, I think adding Parker and even a Daniel-esque player adds at least 1 game win.
Oh, I think it adds
plus the natural improvement of your Sheasel, your Wardlaw, McKercher, etc. Means we should be no injuries. Hopefully we got Charlie Comben now. We know he can play down back, so you're playing a him and a Logue, and probably Core. Probably out. I think we've got a good defense then. So look, I think we do improve, especially if we can get these type of players in. Houston, he should be worth 2 games, but I think we'll improve. I think he'll stay. I know a lot of people are nervous about it. I think he'll stay. And look, worst case, he says I'm leaving. We'll get we'll get good compo for him.
Yeah, you'd hope so.
Wow, yeah. The only problem is that they don't give out two lots of compo anymore. So it was like, I think, was it Melbourne or something got like pick 2 and 3 for Trengove or something rubbish like that. Yeah, look, if he left, we'd get the next pick in the draft. So, and that's, I know people are going to say, well, what's that worth to us? And it's, well, at least you get something, unless they scrap the system after this year's shambles.
No, who knows with the AFL? They change the agenda to suit themselves all the time. So, yeah, not much you can do about it. Well, Jesse, it's been an interesting first week. Well, probably not so much interesting. Hopefully, it's a bit of a better second week. Did you want anything else before I let you go?
No, just one of the things I saw pop up on X while we were on here is apparently Port Adelaide is going to give one of our North VFL players a spot on their list.
Okay, do you know who that is?
Yeah. Do you want to have a crack of who's one of our VFL listed players who had a good season? Probably our best.
Just VFL. Is it the midfielder Watkins?
Yeah, Watkins. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
so
good
our
luck to him.
VFL captain. Yeah, apparently Port Adelaide's going to give him a spot on the list.
Oh, that's awesome. No, that's really good news. High character individual as well. So hopefully he does well. I don't know if he'll ever play a game there or anything like that.
No, I mean pretty deep midfield, but I've liked what I've seen with him. So good on him. That's probably a positive. I'm ending it on a positive note. Good for his career. Good to see a player get a crack at it, and he's been good for our VFL team. So look, in terms of trades, hopefully next week is. Well, it's only 3 days next week, isn't it? Plus this weekend. Are you allowed to trade on the weekend, or is it just all shit?
No, they just have the weekend off. Like, they don't work for the other 355 days of the year, but they decide, let's have a weekend off and hit the piss. And
so these next 2 days, all they do is just talk shit to each other and offer deals, and then it comes Monday morning, and then they probably scrap the deals they made anyway.
Exactly.
So by next Wednesday, we'll know it's all over. Well, it's not all over because you can trade picks up until the draft, but at least we'll know what players we have.
No, that's exactly right. Well, Jesse, thanks for coming on. I'll try and have you back on next week after this shambles of a trade period is over. Hopefully we've got a couple of extra players into the club. Who knows, there might be a surprise and we might get someone different. Also, thank you to all you local listeners as well. Don't forget to check out the show on YouTube, like and subscribe. leave comments, push that notification bell as well. I'll be back next week with the boys, also talking about the women's team as well. So look out for that. Until then, bye for now and go Roos.